Hello, good morning, everybody, or good afternoon, depending on where you are in the world. Welcome to the Sword and Globe of Honor 2023 application webinar. I'm going to immediately hand over to our Chief Adjudicator, Dr. Sean Davis, who is going to run through some instructions on how to apply for this year's scheme. Post presentation, we'll be fielding questions and giving you the answers. You can also do this in the chat while the event is running. Okay, so without further ado, over to you, Sean.
Thank you very much. Morning, everybody. As David said then, good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are. I'm really pleased to be able to talk to you about this year's Sword and Globe of Honor. As many of you know, I have held the Chief Adjudicator role for quite some time and led a very experienced team of adjudicators on these awards. And so it's a good opportunity, I think, for me to share with you some of the things that I've found, some of the things that we're continuing to find, and then to take you through the question sets for this year and give you a steer on that. Now, in terms of the Sword of Honor Chief Adjudicator's report and the Globe of Honor's Chief Adjudicator's report, I'm not going to take you through those page by page, but what I will do is talk to you about some of the themes that we identify, and in using the Chief Adjudicator's reports, that's an incredibly strong way to start your application, by downloading those reports, looking at that, and finding the kind of observations that have been made. Now, I've said this for many years, the importance of using the Chief Adjudicator's report, and I can see it in the applications when people have done that, and I can also see it when people haven't done that. So I strongly encourage you to use that adjudicator's report as the basis for you to start preparing your application. The reason why I say I'm not going to go through both of them is because the similarities, there's a read across between the two of them, and some of the things you will look out for, some of the things that I really want to draw your attention to, are in what we call the question stem. So when you have the stem, and if I look, for example, and give you a question last year as an example. So in the Sword of Honor, question 1, it says, with relevant reference to the outcomes from your recent 5-star audit, explain how the organisation has established suitable processes for the effective control of planned, permanent and temporary changes that have the potential to impact upon organisational health and safety performance. Now, where you get the lower end scoring submissions, they tend to tell you about the activity and how that activity is overviewed and managed and implemented. But where we get the top end scoring applicants is where, and this is something I've said for many years, is where the first thing that you do is deconstruct the question. So if I use this as an example, with relevant reference to the outcomes from your 5-star audit, right? That, it has a colon at the end of it, and people think it's just a nod to the fact you've had an audit. It's not. It's asking you to make reference to what was found in your audit. And that can be both a strength or a development opportunity. If you scored particularly well in the audit, then you say, as was recognised in the audit under section X, Y, and Z, this is an area that we are particularly strong in. Then you go on to explain how the organisation established or has established processes for these aspects. So how did you come up with the process? Was it born out of a risk management conversation? Is it something that you did around the table as part of your risk assessment processes? Then you go on and you talk about planned control of planned and permanent and temporary changes. So it might be that you say, right, we have predominantly, we have a, for example, it's in construction, we have a very fast moving, ever changing work environment, and we manage our change by X, Y, and Z. And then you talk about how you identified that potential impact on the health and safety performance, and whether it was a health issue, a safety issue, or both. So you can see just in that question alone, and let's not forget, this is aimed at 5-star achieving organisations. So it's not going to be an easy question just waved through. You would expect it to have a lot of information in there, but it's really important, super important, that you deconstruct the question. If you then look at the Chief Adjudicator's report, in there you'll be able to see that we talked about an assessment using Plan, Do, Check, Act, how we had a risk identification process that looked at both permanent and temporary change, and I gave the applicant the opportunity to talk about what they did in practice. It then says about you going on to talk about specific issues in temporary and permanent change, and how the applicants then went on, the high scoring applicants went on to talk about both health and safety. So that is, if you look and say, if you look in the Chief Adjudicator's report, you will see a question, but then if you look at when it's been written up, and I've kind of given the analysis to it, it consists of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 paragraphs of feedback. So that's why I'm saying it's incredibly important that you use the Chief Adjudicator's report. But then illustrate that, let me give you another example. If we were to go to question 3 in last year's application, it says again, with relevant reference to the outcomes from your recent 5-star audit. So make reference to it, make reference to what you found, the good, the bad, the development opportunity or the strength. Describe how the site has established suitable processes to recognise and support mental health and well-being. So describe a description. What did you do? What did the organisation or that team do to establish processes? How was that done? Was it done through consultation with unions? Was it done through using your employee engagement scores? Was it done by employee champions? Was it a kind of a combination of that? Did you partner with Mates in Mind, for example? Did you work with the local mental health charity? How did you do that? And how did you develop a way of both recognising mental health and wellbeing issues and then being able to respond to that and offer some support? And how do you then, within the mental health and wellbeing, how do you define wellbeing? So mental health is an aspect of the broader wellbeing debate, but the strong applicants talked about how they recognise that mental health has an interdependency and an intersectionality with things like financial health and physical health, and they talked about how it's that as part of the wider health and wellbeing strategy. So I hope from just those two in there, I'll move on to the globe now and we'll do the same with the globe. But I hope from that you can see, and if you were to take away 3 points from this and the globe actually, it would be point 1 is that this is for 5-star achieving organisations. So it's part of building on what you've already done incredibly well, but it's not as simple as just answering the question. You really need to think about the question and what the question is asking you and answer it in a very purposeful and thought out and rounded way. So that's point 1. Point 2 is deconstruct it. Point 1. Point 2 is answer all parts of the question. So when you've deconstructed it, make sure that you are covering all elements of it. And point 3 is, if you're not great at something and it's been identified in the audit or it's a development area, that's fine too. That's absolutely fine. So you can talk about, this is something that we scored low on, or that is an area we've identified we need to improve upon X, Y, Z, because you will get credit for that as well. You will get credit for identifying development opportunities, because the audit is part of a continuous improvement exercise, which is part of leading to kind of safety and environmental and health and wellbeing excellence. Okay, so if we do the same then on the, if I can do the same on the globe, I'll take you to the globe Chief Adjudicator's report. Okay, so take this down through this. So as you can see here, so very, very similar format, very, very similar in terms of referencing the environmental and sustainability audit. So again, making sure you are linking this back to the audit. If you then look at question 1 here, explain how you intend to further enhance the organisational culture to improve environmental sustainability performance. So that is an explanation. So both what are you doing and how are you going to do it? So both the method and the drivers for that, and then how are you going to use that to enhance organisational culture. So what are you wanting to improve? What are you wanting to enhance? Are you wanting to enhance environmental management leadership, awareness? Are you wanting to link it into other operational decision making? And how are you then going to use that? And what would your environmental sustainability performance then look like? Were you successful at that? So again, it's link it back to the audit, deconstruct the question, answer all parts of the question.
Sean, can I just jump in there just for a second? We can't actually see your screen at the moment. I think it's not sharing properly.
Do you see it now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thanks, Sean.
Yeah. So question 3 then. Question 3. So thanks for the heads up, David, by the way. So with relevant reference to the outcome from your recent 5-star environmental sustainability audit, again, in the STEM, describe how the current knowledge management system will be further enhanced to improve the environmental sustainability performance of the organisation. Now, this one was quite a differentiator because lots of people didn't understand what a knowledge management system is. And interestingly for this, I wasn't aware or made aware of any applicant coming back to British Safety Council asking for clarification on this. Now, they might have done it in the local markets or with their key account manager, but don't forget, we want you as the independent adjudicator, but also British Safety Council as the organisation want you to do well. So there are no trick questions. We never set out to trip you up. We always have positive intent when it comes to marking. So if there's a question that you don't understand or it doesn't translate in a particular language very well, then come back and ask the question, and the team will either ask the other adjudicators or contact me, and we can help you out with that. So don't never be shy or uncomfortable asking questions. You're not going to be penalised. You're not going to be you shouldn't be embarrassed, is what I'm saying. So here, so how do you, what is your knowledge management system? Do you know what one is? Have you established one? And then how are you going to build that out to include the sustainability performance of the organisation, and then enable the findings from, for example, the audit or other issues to go back into the organisation so that it becomes what we call a learning organisation, so something that's continually improving and developing. Okay. So if I go to the this year's question set, tell me when you can see this, please, because this is what you'll all be interested in, I'm sure. Can you see that?
Yeah, we can see that, Sean. Yeah.
Okay. So sort of on this year's. So that's the adjudicator report. Apologies. Can you see that?
Yeah, we can see that. It's not quite a full screen though, Sean, but we can see it.
Okay. All right. So standard format as normal, 60 marks. Applicants must score a minimum of 45 marks to remain eligible for that. A minimum of 2 individual responses must be within the top banding. Submissions will become ineligible if they don't meet the criteria, you would imagine. And we do allow some tolerance around marking, but we're looking for 750 words per question, ideally. Okay. So if we look at this then, question 1, again, I'm not going to keep repeating this about with relevant to the recent outcomes, because they've all got that element. So core principle is always link it back to your audit. That is, identify the most significant 5-star audit outcomes and explain how the relevant recommendations will be used to ensure continual improvement of the occupational health and safety management system performance. Looking across that, and again, I'm not going to read every element out on that, but you can see we're looking to get the difference between top marks and bottom marks is all about depth, breadth, and examples. So this is how have you taken the audit and the findings? How have you then built on the recommendations and put them into your system to drive continuous improvement? And what examples can you cite to give that and that have got some kind of value add dimension to them? Question 2, describe how operational risk factors are reflected within core health and safety competency requirements across all levels of the organisation. Now, you will find within the SWORD and the Globe, we look across a range of kind of technical measures, so risk management, risk assessment, and then we look at competency measures, and then we look at leadership behaviours and culture. So generally, when I'm writing the questions, they're the 3 sort of areas I'm looking at: technical, compliance, legislation, leadership, engagement, inclusion, and culture, essentially. And this is an example of the technical flowing through into the kind of competence and leadership piece. And this is again what we call a differentiator in questions. And it's the lower scoring applicants will talk about things like just about a competency matrix and competency to do the core job, whereas the top end applicants will talk about how they have influenced the board and various committees around the board or their leadership teams around competence, how they've developed competence in both safety and health. So we know that health's coming to the fore even more. And then how that level of competence is reflected down the organisation. So whether you are the chief executive, managing director or equivalent in that operating business unit or organisation, right through to the operational front line, that safety, health and the competence to do that job has been considered. So we're not looking for things like everybody gets an induction, everybody, people who we make sure we've got adequate first aiders. They're elements of it, but we're looking for much more breadth on that and much more consideration of broader competence to drive that safety agenda forwards. 3, describe how the organisation ensures the requirements within the business recovery plan post-emergency event are effectively communicated to relevant stakeholders. So that is, have you got one? What does it look like? How do you keep it refreshed? How are you communicating that to stakeholders? How do you check it's then been understood? And then also things like differentiate. If you want to get extra marks, you will talk about how it's regularly reviewed, refreshed. People are then communicated. Top marks would talk about where people have done things like desktop exercises, scenario planning, etc., etc. So that's how you've taken that kind of academic concept of a business recovery plan and created that, but as you've also tested that it would work if you needed to use it in anger. Question 4 then, explain how monitoring of work-related ill health, including mental health, is used to influence health, safety and wellbeing strategy and objectives. So that is, how do you monitor and measure work-related ill health? What is your method for doing that? What is the approach that you take? How then do you use the outcomes of that, including in mental health, to drive your improvement agenda forwards across a range of health, safety and wellbeing objectives? So basically, how do you take what the data is telling you in terms of ill health, absence, condition monitoring, and use that information to then inform your strategy and plans for the future kind of going forwards. So it's about taking this academic through to this kind of practical implementation piece. Okay, so I'm happy to pause there before I go on to the globe marking scheme. If there are any questions that anyone's got at this stage. I think I've talked now for 20 minutes flat out, but I think it'd be helpful to see if there's any questions or clarification that anybody wants firstly on this.
We don't have anything currently in the chat, Sean, so you've obviously done a very comprehensive job thus far. But I would encourage anybody to pop any questions you may have into the chat function, and we'll flag them up to Sean as he goes on. Thanks.
Okay, right. So I'll take us on to the globe next. So the globe, hopefully you can see that by now. Can you see that?
Yeah, we can see that.
Great, thank you. So this is the globe. Again, same principle, same marking criteria, same categorization. And if you look then in the questions here, now you'll see a slight difference in this approach here because there's some more kind of numerical kind of examples required in here. But that is not numerical answered. What's the word I'm looking for? More a cited number of examples, but that's just based on feedback we've had from other people about previous years about how many examples they would like. So here you see we've got for 3 of the audit outcomes, provide a simplified cost-benefit analysis of planned programs to improve environmental sustainability. We're not looking for, I'm not looking for a full kind of business case written out, numbers. What we're looking for is the idea of that you understand a cost-benefit analysis and how you would be able to put that forward. So how you'd be able to take a recommendation from the audit and how you were going to then put that into practice and how you would basically convince people in your organization, finance team, leadership team, operations teams, that it was the right thing to do and that you could put a financial argument across. Okay. Describe how your organization will use innovation, example, research, technology, tools, management data, etc., in future plans and programs to improve environmental sustainability performance. Now that's asking for 5 or more to be the top category, 5 or more examples. This one is what I would consider to be a gift of the question, because there's nothing really you can get wrong on it. As long as you read the marking scheme and as long as you meet the criteria, it's about your organization, so you can put in place. This is a gift of a question, because you will write about your organization and you will talk about how you are innovating within your organization, and as long as you make reference to innovation, continuous improvement, and give 5 or more examples, then you'd be in the top mark category on that. Then we move on to kind of that culture and leadership piece. So describe how the senior management team lead and manage so as to improve the environmental sustainability performance of the organisation. And again, a number of examples. Now, if you look at lead and manage, so as we know, leadership is about setting by example, it's about walking the talk, it's about role modelling, sponsorship. And then management is about making sure you've got adequate resources allocated, funding, costing, how you deal with issues in the event of a failure, etc., etc. So it's really important that you talk about leadership and management and how those 2 levers are used to improve performance in the organisation. And then question 4. Explain how you intend to use the output of the audit to improve sustainability performance and culture. So that, again, that's a specific one on culture, and it looks at how are you driving performance forward in an ethical way and in a responsible business way, and you are both sustainable, ethical, driving performance, but that you're not doing it at the expense of people. So you're not, so it's about making sure that you're giving due consideration to things like making sure everybody is their own environmental advisor, that they're mindful of how to manage waste and how to manage in the event of a spill, who to talk to about environmental issues that they might have. Just examples of things that have been done or could be done that will drive that cultural improvement and awareness forward. So again, that one is going to be very specific to the organisation, and you'll be able to talk about the things that you've done, or when it says arrange, you see there it says arrange a minimum of five examples or campaigns. That can both be things that you are intending to do. So you might only have 2 or 3 that you're doing, but you might say, and we've identified that by the end of this year we want to do X, and in the first half year of next year we want to do Y and Z, because you do get kind of positive marking for things that you're going to be doing in the future.
Sean, we've got a couple of questions, if I may.
Yep.
Got one asking, should we refer to the 5-star audit when they're answering the questions?
What do we mean, should you refer to? Where you should refer to the relevant aspects. So where it says, for example, with relevant reference to the outcomes from your recent 5-star environmental sustainability audit, where you've the section in that audit that looks at general continuous improvement, I would be wanting you to say, in our recent audit, in section X, Y, and Z, we discussed this, and this is what we've done about it. So it doesn't have to be a detailed cut and paste. It just has to bridge from the audit into this submission.
Okay, great. We got another question about data. What sort of data are you looking for in the responses?
Anything and everything, whatever you want. Whatever you want is, so it could be things that I've seen that I find really helpful. Things like your quantitative data. So you might say we have a well-being question in our annual employee survey, and that's gone up 3 points in the last 2 years. Or it might be we had a lost time incident frequency rate of 0.1 and now we're down at 0.8, driven by this. It might be that you say one of the members in our team has just been recognised as a safety champion and been awarded an award by EMA. So whatever you want, any data, anything, as long as it supports the question, is welcome.
Brilliant. Here's a nice question, bit of an open question actually, Sean. What are the common mistakes?
You're going to think I'm being sarcastic when I tell you this, and I'm not, but I've just got to say it as it is. The most common mistake is not answering the question. So what people do is they read the question and they give me they do get a great answer, but it just doesn't answer the question. So it goes off on a different tangent, and you think you've not, and even with the best positive intent in the world, you can't bring it back. So that's why those of you that I've spoken to on these sorts of events before, I'm sure you know, I always say deconstruct the question and answer the question, because it's really soul destroying, really disheartening for the adjudicator when you're marking a submission and it's a great answer, but it doesn't answer the question, because you really want to give them the most you can give them, but they've not answered the question. So the biggest mistake is not answering it, and then the second biggest mistake is only answering it. So if we look at question 3 here, describe how the senior management team lead and manage. So if somebody says our senior management team comprise of X, Y, and Z, and they're really strong on leadership and do X, Y, and Z, and they don't mention management, you can only give them, you can't give them full marks because they've only answered half the question.
Brilliant. And I should also point out at this point to everybody on the call today, we have on our website britsafe.org in the awards section a whole set of frequently asked questions and answers to those questions. So if you want to take a look at those, that will also give you some guidance on this. Right, I'm just looking at the other questions we've got in the boxes, Sean. Here's one. Hi, Sean. During 5-star audit, we received certain recommendations in different categories. Should we reply for all the recommendations or select the significant ones, considering the limitations of 750 words?
I would say you qualify it in your opening statement. So you would say, with reference to the audit, we received recommendations across 3 or 4 areas. For the purpose of this question, I'm answering it based on this, and qualify it that way front. You will be, otherwise you'll end up, you'll not be able to hit it. You'll struggle with the word count. So just pick kind of caveat it, qualify it front.
Great. Okay, and just finally, on the questions we've got, one relating to question number 2 of Sword of Honour. What kind of evidence are you looking for?
Let me get that back up so we can read it. Can you see it?
Yeah.
So question 2, describe how operational risk factors are reflected within core health and safety requirements across all levels of organisation. So I've been looking for you to talk about how you've determined competence and the tools that you've used. For example, I said a competency matrix, a development plan, kind of driving objectives. But we're not looking for evidence to be appended to it, just an explanation of how you have considered competence and the importance of it and how you're going to then implement it in your business. So not examples, not examples in terms of appended examples, but just talk about the method that you used.
Okay, I think that's it in terms of the questions for now, Sean. So feel free to carry on.
Well, the only other thing I would say is, in terms of I've learned over the years, I can tell when people have prepared, and I can tell people that have sat down and done it and submitted it a day or 2 before the deadline, and I can tell the people who have answered the question, then slept on it, and then gone back to it and iterated it, and you get a much better outcome if you do it that way. And the other piece of advice I would give you is, once you've done the submission and you've written it up, then get somebody else to read it over for you. So get one of your operational colleagues or someone else in one of your other teams or somebody else to give a perspective on it and see if there's any holes or gaps that you've missed, and then give it a more rounded answer. There we are. So that's Chief Adjudicated Report, mark scheme for Sword, Chief Adjudicated Report for Globe, mark scheme. Big 3 tips: give yourself plenty of time and iterate it. Answer all parts of the question, and any issues that you've got, any challenges, any questions, then speak to the British Safety Council for clarification, and they'll either be able to answer it themselves or come to me or the team to get you answers.
Great stuff. Thanks, Sean. I'll just come back on screen now. And I'll just round up with some key dates for everybody. So obviously the applications are open. The deadline for applications is the 22nd of September. So we have about a month still to get your applications in. Results will be then emailed to applicants on the 12th of October, and the winners list will be published on the 13th of October. And then for any inquiries about results, the deadline will be the 23rd of October, and trophies and plaques will need to be ordered by the 3rd of November. And the final deadline is obviously the 24th of November, which is the Sword and Globe Gala Luncheon at the Drapers Hall in London. So I think that concludes everything for today. There is a recording available of this particular presentation. And also, as I mentioned earlier, if you go to britsafe.org and go to the awards section, you will see Sword and Globe of Honour subsection, which has frequently asked questions and answers to those questions, which will give you some good guidance on that. And failing that, you can always email awards@britsafe.org, and we will endeavour to help you with any questions you might have. And with that, I think that concludes everything for today. I'd like to thank you all for attending. I see we had a huge attendance of over 50 people today, so a lot of interest in this. All that remains me to do now is to thank Sean for his time today and his expertise in this, and once again for being our chief adjudicator. With that, I'll conclude. Thanks, Sean. With that, I'll conclude proceedings, and we hope to see you in November in London at the Drapers Hall. Thanks very much, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye all. Bye-bye.